Well, folks, it's now my honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, and I heard her in rehearsal yesterday. She is phenomenal. Her name is Terry Bentley Hill. She is a nationally recognized mental health advocate and criminal defense attorney in Dallas, Texas. Ms. Hill holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Texas at Austin and a Doctor of Jurisprudence degree from Texas A&M University School of Law. Hill's focus on mental health issues occurred after losing both her first husband and her 14-year-old daughter to suicide. It is her mission to help others suffering from mental health diseases by sharing her story of pain and healing. Folks, please help me give a great big virtual welcome to today's speaker, Terry Bentley Hill.
Carlo, thank you so much. I'm humbled every time I hear that, mainly because I am here talking to you as a guest of Tom and Ellen Harris. And I'm humbled because this is one of the best events you will ever attend on this topic. And I suggest to you today that this is the most important information you're going to get today, or tomorrow, or this week, or forever. This is a topic that we do need to talk about. And I know, because as Carlo said, I'm the survivor. I am a survivor of suicide. Not once and not twice, but twice. And I'm also a survivor with a capital S. And what that means is I am one of those who has been left behind. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what we can do with more information, like QPR, that the foundation supplies to anybody who wants to know how to save a life. Now, normally, when a person speaks at the Harris Foundation, they are in a humongous, cavernous room with hundreds and hundreds of people sitting out there listening to the speaker, listening to Christina Judge, listening to Tom and Ellen, listening to Matt, to Alicia, everybody. But really, it is just a huge stage and the message that we can present. So today is different. And see, there's an island of opportunity in every difficulty. And so thank goodness for Zoom. Thank goodness for Facebook Live, because I can have lunch with you. I can stand here today, and I can be welcomed into your home, and I can have an intimate conversation with you about a very difficult topic. And so I get to have lunch now with people in Israel, in England, and all over this country. And so I'm going to share part of my story. I'm going to share things that people ask me all the time as a survivor of suicide. And I'm going to give a message of hope from what I have learned from my own experience. So if I were sitting across the table from a friend, which you are today, many friends have asked me in the past, Terry, you are the survivor of suicide. What is that like? And what have you learned as a result of that? And if you could leave one message for us today, what would that be? I'm going to give you some really good news. First of all, and I'm going to get to this a little bit more later. But the really good news today is that suicide is the number one most preventable death there is. Preventable death. So that's the good news. But I want to start off by saying, as a survivor, I saw on Facebook Live and on Zoom the number of people who are watching who have experienced suicide in their own life. So I'm talking to a bunch of survivors. And I want you to know, my heart's with you. I know how painful this is. I want to honor that pain. I want to honor you as a survivor, and I want to acknowledge you. And I want people to know how difficult it is to survive suicide. Because suicide is the most complicated death to grieve. Unlike a natural death from a different kind of illness that is more acceptable, or from a death from a car accident, or death from even murder. I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? So I see a lot of different things, and I deal with a lot of people who have experienced terrible things. But nothing is more complicated than living as a survivor of suicide, because it becomes very personal. It feels personal. It's complicated because I feel like, what should I have done? What could I have done? Why did this happen? Because see, our brain doesn't wrap around this idea of someone dying by suicide. So we have to come up with a reason why. We have to figure it out. And the person, usually we can project our anger on other death situations. For example, if someone dies in a car accident, we can be mad at the slick roads. Someone dies of cancer, we can be mad at cancer. But if someone dies of suicide, there are only two people we can be angry at, and that's either the person who has died or ourselves. And we're not going to be mean to the person who's gone. So we tend to beat ourselves up. Why didn't I answer that text message? Why didn't I answer the phone? If I had, maybe this never would have happened. There are so many whys that we ask. Why? And what I have learned through this process is the only person who can answer that why is gone. So I've learned I had to give up the whys. I had to let go of the whys and just realize that many people who die by suicide are suffering from a medical condition or a mental health disorder, and I can't answer that why, just like I can't save or understand why someone might die from cancer. So I had to let go of that. It was not a judgment. And it's not a judgment on them, and it's not a judgment on me. And what I also learned through this process is we don't know what we don't know. And we do the best we can, but when we learn more, we do better. And what I mean by that is 25 years ago, I was married to an elected official in the state of Texas. And he struggled with a substance use disorder called alcoholism. And he also had undiagnosed depression. And there were things that he said to me that if I had spoken the language of depression, because there's a language of depression, but I didn't understand the language of depression at that time because I didn't know what I didn't know. And oftentimes when you suffer from a depression or a mental health condition, you don't know you have it until you don't have it. So oftentimes a person who is experiencing that doesn't even know that what is going on with them. They may medicate that condition with some other coping skill, whether that be drinking too much. And by the way, with COVID, alcohol sales are up 54%. So people are coping with their anxiety with alcohol and other negative coping skills. So what I had to learn was the language of depression. For example, what do I mean? Well, my husband telegraphed through our entire marriage that he was experiencing suicide ideation. For example, he was a district attorney, and I'll never forget this. He was trying a capital murder case, a police shooting. A young man shot a police officer on Christmas night, and that is a capital case in Texas, and my husband was going for the death penalty. But instead of the death penalty, the jury came back with life in prison. And my husband was so devastated by that. He felt like he had let the officer down. He felt like he had let the widow down. He felt like he had let the community down. He felt like he had let himself down. And so he says to me, I might as well kill myself because I have let everyone down. But because my brain didn't work that way, I just thought, well, that's pretty extreme. I didn't understand the consequences of those comments. And all through our marriage, he telegraphed those messages to me. And so I missed it because I didn't know what I didn't know. 9 years later, I lost my daughter to suicide, to depression. And I want to tell you a little bit about Hallie. She was 14 years old when she died. And she told me things like, Mom, nobody likes me. I have no friends. See, what happens when a person is experiencing depression is they have cognitive distortion. They have thinking errors. Their brain starts to lie to them. And Hallie was a darling girl. You heard the stories about Jordan. Hallie was the same way. She had everything going for her. And I knew it was not true that she didn't have friends. But that's what she was saying. She was using the words that should have been a red flag. She said, nobody sits with me at the cafeteria. So by golly, I was going to go up there and prove her wrong. And I volunteered in the cafeteria and I watched her. And of course, she had 20 friends sitting around her at the table. So I knew she was wrong. She had tons of friends. But you know what I learned? What I thought about that was irrelevant. It's what she thought. And so I had to learn those words, the all or nothing words. Everyone would be better off without me. I wish I could just go away. I think that people would be happy if I weren't around anymore. Those are words that are red flags. And then also depression shows you people's state of mind. People isolate when they're depressed. I know, because I experienced that after my first husband died by suicide. I experienced depression. I isolated. I wouldn't answer the phone. I couldn't get out of bed except for to take my kids to school. So I know how difficult it is. And so when a person's brain starts to lie to them, then oftentimes it seems easier to die than to live. So what do we do about that? Well, I'm going to tell you that I started a foundation called Stop Minding Your Own Business because I had a conversation with a gentleman who had attempted suicide. And he told me some things I will never forget. When he was 17 years old, he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And when I said, what were you thinking? I am the mother of a child who died by suicide. Please tell me, what were you thinking? And this is what he said. Oftentimes when a person decides to die by suicide, they'll make a pact with themselves. If this happens today, I won't die today. Might die tomorrow, but I won't die today. The pact that he made with himself that day was if one person asked me if I'm okay, I won't jump. And he told me how he asked his dad to take him to the city bus so he could catch the city bus to the Golden Gate Bridge. And when he hugged his dad goodbye for the last time, his dad never said, hey, Kevin, what's wrong? He gets on a city bus with people packed on either side of the aisle and sobbed all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge, and not one person asked him, are you okay? He gets to the bridge, he's getting ready to jump. A lady walks up to him and he said, I'll never forget her as long as I live. She had this dark hair and she had these big glasses on, and he said, she's going to ask me if I'm okay. But she didn't. She said, here's a camera, will you take my picture? And he went, okay. So he took her picture, handed her back the camera, and he jumped. And this is what I want you to hear. I don't know if you are a teacher. I don't know if you're a student. I don't know if you're a parent. I don't know if you're contemplating suicide yourself. I don't know. It doesn't matter who you are, but this is what I want you to hear. If the minute he jumped, he regretted it. Please, God, don't let me die. And he thought the saddest thing before he hit that water was that his family would not know that he wanted to live. He wanted to take it back. When he told me that story, and he's one of 43 people to ever survive jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and live to tell his story. When he got through telling me, I thought, oh my God, we've got to stop minding our own business. We've got to start asking the questions. Are you okay? Because we can all do that. And we have to stop minding our own business. In this country, we're taught, don't mind your own business. Don't tell me how to raise my kids. Don't tell me how to take care of my lawn. In this instance, when it comes to a person who's struggling, stop minding your own business. Ask the question, are you okay? Because when you do that, think about suicide like a balloon. Suicidal crisis is like air filling up a balloon. And when you ask the question, are you okay? It releases some of that air out of that balloon and alleviates the crisis. So I want you to know that it's okay to ask the question, are you okay? Do you have a plan? And if they do have a plan, what is your plan? Ask the question. Now, this foundation is very important, and I know they're trying to raise $150,000 today. I'm going to challenge you. We're going to raise $250,000 today, because when Hallie died, one of the things my therapist said, Terry, is Hallie just died too soon. One of these days, we're going to know how to treat this, and we're going to be able to take care of people who are suffering with suicide ideation and with depression, and that's what this foundation does. It supports research. It opens the door to speaking about this. And by the way, tell your story. There are a bunch of you survivors out there. Tell your story, because your story may be the key that unlocks someone else's prison. And I want to end with this. I always end with a little bit of hope. The day after my former husband died, a woman walked in my home and she said, Terry, you need to write a gratitude list. And I'm now the single mother of 4 little children. I said, are you kidding me? I have nothing to be grateful for. She said, well, let's think about that. She said, do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food on your table? Do you have 4 little girls who love you? Do you have a bed that you sleep in? And do you have legs that can take you from that bed to your bathroom sink? And do you have a toothbrush that you can use every single day? And I said, yeah, I do. She said, well, then it seems to me you have a whole lot to be grateful for. So every day that I pick this toothbrush up, I'm reminded I have a lot to be grateful for. And today, I'm grateful for my husband, Tom. I'm grateful for my sister who's watching. I'm grateful for my kids, Katie, Elizabeth, and Bentley. I'm grateful for Tom and Ellen Harris, and I'm grateful for this foundation. And I encourage you to give today to save a life. Not one more child, not one more death. We can stop that right now. I want to thank you. Thank you for listening to me. It means the world to me that I get the chance to share what it's been like for me, but what we can do. It's the #1 most preventable death. I want to thank you so much.